Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk specifically about Dungeons and Dragons cleanup, which is kind of interesting. Dungeons and Dragons cleanup. What are you talking about there, Scott? This is an interesting topic. Let's get into this. So what I mean by cleanup, right, is let me explain Toni Collette, and then the way she used the term cleanup. I learned how to clean up. All right, so stay with me here. So basically, I'm a huge fan of Toni Collette, and so is a huge fan of cleanup, right? And the reality is, I'm a huge fan of Toni Collette, and my favorite Toni Collette film is Hereditary. It is actually my favorite, bar none. I am a fan of horror, A24 horror specifically. I think what my genre of horror is really art house horror. I don't like slasher flicks. I don't like, the Saw movies. They don't, A24 is spot on. It's exactly the horror I want, right? And Hereditary is the best horror film ever made, in my opinion. Very realistic, digs deep into what it means to be in the occult. Really horrifying things in that film. And Toni Collette does an amazing job. And basically what she does in this is her mother was literally possessed by one of the most powerful demons that served Satan. And her whole life is essentially cursed because her mother traded service to the devil for a lifetime for wealth and fame and power and all this stuff, right? And so Toni Collette is her daughter and is coming to understand that her mother was essentially possessed by a powerful demon for her entire life in return for power and money and fame and prestige, right? I don't think fame, more power, money, and prestige, right? And this is a real thing. We don't take demons for granted as evangelical Christians. We believe they're completely real. So, if you watch Hereditary, the way they process demons in that film, spot on with what evangelical Christians believe about demons. We believe they're real. We believe they can possess people who are not saved. We believe it's like somebody read our Bible, paid attention, and put it on screen, right? So it is a terrifying film, right? And so basically, Toni Collette's character in the film essentially allows herself to be open to demons, and then does some rituals, and then allows herself to be essentially possessed exactly like her mother was possessed, right? Very interesting film, right? But there's these scenes in it where Toni Collette is under incredible strain, right? And she's talking to her son, who's close to demon possession as well, and can sense all these demons in the house, and it's really, really incredible. It's an absolutely staggering, incredible film. And Toni Collette goes through this thing where she's where Toni Collette is portraying her character and just going through these life horrors, right? And portraying this as her character, right? And she's going through incredible emotions, deep sadness, deep anger, deep remorse, sorrow, just absolute emotions at peak level, right? And so what Toni Collette said as the actress in a recent interview, she said, in that film, I had to learn to clean up, right? And she said, what I had to do was I had to learn after each scene how to process my body, my body and my emotions, right? And so what she was saying, and the reason why is the body doesn't know the difference between fiction and reality. The body doesn't know. So she was putting her body through this emotional strain to portray this character, and she was connecting to the events that were happening to this character, which was literally demon possession, right? That's what she's portraying. She's literally portraying demon possession, not being demon possessed, but literally portraying it. And so her body is going through all this horror, this fear, this anxiety, this anger, And he said each time after each scene, I had to build processes that allowed me to clean up, right? Clean up my emotions, clean up my stress, clean up my intellect, right? And just get set level, right? This is interesting, right? What do we do at the Dungeons & Dragons table, right? Well, one of the most important things we do at the Dungeons & Dragons table is we let the dice decide, right? Like by the way, if you're playing with some dungeon master who fudges, you're playing with a hack, and you should get a new dungeon master, okay? That's my opinion on fudging, right? Okay? Right? So to be clear, right? You roll the dice and things happen, right? And so when those happen, one of the things that can happen is your player character can die, right? And there's been this big debate on what, in OSR, death means nothing. They run funnels, they run meat grinders. It takes 2 minutes to build a character, and you're supposed to not shed a tear or care less when that character dies, right? That don't happen in D&D 5e. You can play a character for weeks, months, years, and you are investing yourself in that player character, right? You are telling stories with that player character, and you are getting a new identity. You are getting a new set of memories, a new set of sensations, and a new set of emotions. This ain't OSR land, right? This is playing for keeps, right? And the stuff that happens at a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition table, it matters, right? So when you go through a character death, right? First of all, player character death. First of all, I think this is my take. I think, and this is the way I do it, and I think most serious, I'm talking about a serious dungeon master, okay? Somebody who has 100 sessions under their belt, at least, right? And has read half to 100% of all D&D 5e canon, right? A serious dungeon master, right? So, and has read no less than 20 to 50 books to just make their worlds better, like a serious dungeon master, right? When a death happens at the player characters table, we do cleanup. We help the player characters to clean up. One, you should, anytime in a 5th edition game where a player character that's been played for weeks, months, or years dies, you should end the session immediately, right? And then you and every other player at the table should be reaching out in that week 1 to 2 times per week and helping that player clean up, right? So they have gone through an incredibly traumatic experience, right? This other identity they held from their Manifold Sentience, if you don't know what that is, link below, right, is now dead, right? And so I understand, right? People are like, oh, Scott, a player character death isn't the same as a real death. Isn't it? For one, most deaths are very quick, right? And then you're on the other side, and you're either going to you're going to heaven or the hot place, right? And so death is generally very quick, right? And it's either really good news or really bad news, right? Whereas when you die in a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition game, that's going to stick with you. That's going to be there for a while, right? You have to live with that death. We don't live with IRL death, right? So there is actually an argument, like, I'm an evangelical Christian, right? I die, come on, man, I'm going to be with Jesus, right? Ain't nothing but ain't no thing but a chicken wing. It's all glory. It's all joy, right? That's not going to be a traumatic experience for me, right? Whereas Beryl, my turtle wizard, he died about 1.5 years ago, right? And he is not even buried in the Forgotten Realms. I think about him every day. I have experiences from him, right? I have memories, I have sensations, I have emotions still collected in me from that player character, right? And there's real sorrow that lingers, right? So my point is, right, let's give the OSR people are going to come on, OSR partisans, in my humble opinion, watch in the comments below. They'll come and they'll laugh, and they'll say the player character death's no big deal. For them, it isn't, right? The player characters don't matter, so their death for the character death don't matter, right? Like, yeah, for the OSR, nothing matters, right? It's the thing, right? But for a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition player who actually invests time, energy, and focus in a player character, this can be incredibly important. This can be a journey, right? And so let's say you're in a bad situation, and death for you is something you fear, and it's going to be traumatic for you, right? When your player character goes through that, you're going through probably 1 to 10% of an actual death experience, right? You're experiencing sorrow, You might experience trepidation. You might experience vexation. You might experience loss. You might experience grief, right? Like, you're going to go through the trauma of death at 1 to 10% of a real death, right? And so basically, we have to do what Toni Collette is saying. We have to find a way to do cleanup, right? Emotional cleanup, physical cleanup of stress, grief, loss, right? And I think, we have these little, like session zeros. What about a session infinity? Something at the end, right? To say, where are we at? How have we processed what we've actually achieved at the table, right? Which in reality is nothing less, nothing short of adding a new identity to your sentience, right? New memories, new sensations, new memories. New memories, new sensations, new emotions, right? I have stood on the dock of Waterdeep and watched the sunset. I've watched the sun rise, right? I've seen storms through the amber glass of Waterdeep hotels, right? I have hours of memory, sensation, and emotion bound in another world, right? And on some days, it's more real to me than the one I'm in, right? And the reality is, this is what I'm saying to you. Toni Collette realizes this. She's saying, hey, I'm investing myself in this art. And so there needs to be cleanup, right? Now, I do relatively short videos. I know this seems strange for me to say I do videos, but I struggle to get all the content I wanted. I would love to tell you what the cleanup methods are within this video. I just don't have time within this video to do that. But I can, and that's okay, right? Because you may know better ways to clean up than I do, right? But I know Toni Collette is one of my favorite actresses in the world. She's fantastic. Her work in Hereditary is the best American performance of any actor in any horror film ever, right? Jamie Lee Curtis got an Oscar. I like her stuff too, but the reality is Toni Collette did it better, right? And the thing is, what we do at the table is no less important than what she does in those movies. We are portraying a character, and we need to give space for this cleanup, this physical cleanup, this emotional cleanup, and I would even add spiritual cleanup, right? There's because we're dealing with spirit, we're dealing with deities, we're dealing with religion, we're dealing with people who suffer, right? And people are like, oh, they're all imaginary. They might be imaginary to you, right? But the reality is, once you go Manifold Sentience from playing Dungeons and Dragons, these experiences can be very real, right? And I think, and again, if you're an OSR, go with God. Like, you don't need to worry about any of this. None of this stuff, unless you're playing Kelsey Dionne's game, none of this is going to matter, right? Because your characters don't matter, right? But on the deep end of the pool in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, this stuff's real, right? And I want to talk to you right now. You need time for cleanup, exactly the way Toni Collette called out. Every single word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.